Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see y'all. So in January, many centers for spiritual living all over the country and wherever they are like to revisit the first 4 chapters in Ernest Holmes' book, the Science of Mind textbook. I've never done that, but this year I've inspired to do it. So we're going to go through the first 4 chapters basically. So the first chapter is the thing itself. I love the thing itself. That verbiage. The reason why Ernest Holmes used it is because most of what we use to describe the source of all creation has a lot of baggage around it. So when we use the word God, we have the whole Judeo-Christian traditions about it. So not just what it represents, the word God, but all the history, the historical essence behind God, what both the Jewish religion and the Christian religion, and plus what's been done by the nations, by countries, by powers, using this word God. So there's a lot of stuff around God. And then we have Allah, or on the religion and the culture around Allah, or Brahma. Buddhism tried to get away from the whole idea of God by not really having a God. They call it the ground of all being, or the suchness of all life. But they don't have a God per se. So in Taoism, it's the Tao, the way, which again, we don't have a lot of baggage on it, but there's a lot of tradition and culture around it. So when Ernest Holmes used the thing itself, I think what he was trying to represent was the freedom of whatever this is. It doesn't have cultural baggage. It has no baggage. It's absolutely free. When we say the thing itself, we don't have a lot of stuff around the thing itself because most of us have never used it to describe what we would call God, universe. Even universe, I think of as more of a spiritual but not religious term. But it's so devoid of any connection with any cultural understanding that we can begin to understand the freedom. And one of the things Ernest Holmes says in this first chapter is that the divine plan is one of freedom, that we are not meant to be in bondage. We are not meant to be limited. We can enjoy that which our cultures bring. We can enjoy our histories, but we are never to be limited by it. And that is what the essence of what this spirit is. This spirit is never limited. The basic principle, the way we like to say it, and my understanding is that the first person who really articulated this way was a philosopher named Plotinus. That God, I'm going to use God just because it's easier for me. But the thing itself, that which is one, is in, through, and as all creation, and yet never absorbed by that creation. So everything that we can physically see, taste, touch, hear, or smell is the divine. The creator and the creation are one. There's no separation. There's no line that divides it and says, this stops and something else begins. It is infinite. There's no place where it's not. It's fully, wholly, and completely everything that is this earth form, that is the galaxies, that is the billions and billions of stars, all the new discoveries, all of that comes from this one source. Even if you are intuitively inclined, psychically inclined, some people see auras or see energies flowing around. That also is this one power and this one presence. And still it is greater than even that. So sometimes we say this thing itself is energy. It is energy, but it is more than energy because energy is a form, is a phenomena. It is one we have to be intuitively in tune with to be able to see that this room right now is full of energy, swirling energy, that in fact there's nothing solid in this room. But that this thing itself is even beyond that. The thing itself is really beyond anything we could ever humanly conceive. And he says it's anything, we can never fully encompass the thing itself. It is always beyond, it is infinite. But we can absolutely know that we are one with it, that it is all that we are, that there's no separation. And that's the miracle of what we teach. That in all this, the perennial philosophy, you might have heard of Egyptian mystery schools and Greek mystery schools, and many of what the mystics were teaching is what we teach just from day one. There's only one power and there's one presence. There's no separation. My first book into in New Thought, really the one that really grabbed me and that I spent a lot of time with was actually a Joel Goldsmith book, The Thunder of Silence. And he really brings home this idea that there's only one. So I read this one book and he just that there's only one, and how much we have this little subtle belief that there's actually two powers. that there's always a little something that's against us. So we have duality. I'm not saying there's not duality in this form. There's good and there's bad. There's right and there's wrong. There's up and there's down. There's well, I can't think of all the opposites, but you know, right and left. The negative pole and the positive pole. It's what creates the dynamic of this earth. It's the vibration of this frequency in which we're living. But that which created this frequency is beyond it. That which created it transcends this dualistic experience. It's in the dualistic experience, but it's beyond it. It transcends it. And that's what we're made of. That's what all these spiritual teachers are here to remind us of, is that we are not limited to the secondary causation, which is my genetics, my family upbringing, my cultural upbringing, that in fact I'm made from the image and likeness of pure spirit, that each and every one of us is. And that when we are aligned with that, there's nothing opposing us. There is a good that has no opposite that is bad. And there is a love where there is no opposite. There is a peace where there is no opposite. There's a harmony where there is no opposite. That which is absolutely stunning and beautiful has no opposite. There's only one. And when we start lifting our vibration to that oneness, we start experiencing life in a completely different way, even though we're still operating in duality. It's called simultaneous awareness. We're still operating on this physical plane, but our attention and our awareness and our vibration starts to respond to the oneness that is everywhere. There is no other person, there's only oneness. I remember when I first started, well, before I say what my experience was, there's a writer named Mitch Horowitz, and I meant to look up the name of his book. He wrote a book, something about the power of positive thinking. He writes a great blog. He really talks about how positive thinking has been denigrated these last, like we don't really understand how powerful it is. So he's written a whole history about it. But he's thrown out a gauntlet, a challenge to people on his blog this past week. So I want to share what that is. He said his gauntlet is for everyone to pick one book that they really love and that they feel really passionate about. When you read it, you say, I believe this. This is what I think is true. And he said, and then stay with that book for 9 months. Really try to live everything that you believe in that book. You say you believe it. Now spend 9 months with one book. That doesn't mean you don't read other books, but you just keep coming back to living this book. Because one of the things that we do is we read so much stuff, and we're going here, and we're going there, and we're doing this practice, and we're doing that practice. What his view is it will change you if you just take one book and give yourself completely to what it teaches for 9 months. Don't deviate. Just stay with it. If you really passionately believe what it's saying, then live it. And in 9 months, we will see the fruition of that. For me, that book was Thunder of Silence. When I first read it, I completely immersed myself in it. I actually did a month of silence when I was reading it. It was a book that sort of carried me for a long time because it was just this constant oneness. It was at a time where I didn't want complexity. Sometimes I like complexity, as some of you know. But it was a time where I didn't want complexity. I just wanted to know what was pure truth. There's only one. There's nothing opposing you. And I didn't even realize as I was working with it how much subtly I believed there was something against me. I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up that there was some power against me, but I picked it up. It's in the ethers. We're in this world of, all we have to do is look through our social media, and there's always something to be against. Ernest Holmes had that wonderful phrase, wouldn't it be great if a group of people came onto this earth who are for something, only for something and against nothing, always putting our attention on what we are for. There's one power and one presence. So I started living my life from that place, and I moved across country, and I was trying to figure out what job to do, but never did I feel fear. I wasn't afraid of where the next how I was going to support myself. I wasn't worried about what it was going to be. I just kept saying, it is always for me. When we start looking at that, like that's just one idea, so incredibly powerful. There's only one life, one power, one presence, and it is always for you. Everything that's happening is for you. And we start interpreting our life from that place of oneness. Everything that is happening is for me. I am loved by everything. Every conversation, every action, everything that's happening is giving me information out of its love for me. Interpreting your life like that, consistently, over and over, every conversation, everything that's happening is all happening for me. Was it St. Augustine said, we are the center of the universe where there is no circumference. Every person is the center of the universe where there is no circumference. Everything is for me. And then as I was working in my job, I remember someone talked about our employer, and I remember being struck because it never occurred to me that I was there because someone hired me. I was very clear that God put me there, and that I was doing God's work, and that God was my employer, and that I was there to serve the one power and one presence. And I almost paid no attention to the administration or what they were doing because it didn't have anything to do, it had no relevance to my life. My life was to serve the one power and the one presence. And then as I continued on in that job, I did start to feel, I was working in a hospital, and hospitals are very hierarchical. And after a while, after a couple of years there, I started to feel the hierarchy. And then I started saying, and I was sort of low on the hierarchy. Well, I don't feel like I have any power in the human realm. And so I just asked. See, when we're in the oneness, this is my experience anyways, the more we are in the oneness, the more when we ask questions, the quicker our answers come because we're just so in relationship. Our attention is there all of the time. And just in that one question of, how can I be powerful if in the human world I'm not very powerful? And for that day that I asked that question, I was asked by someone who had the same job as I did, by one of the nurses, by a charge nurse, and by one of the doctors, why are you so different here? Why do you work so differently? And I realized that I was having a powerful impact, even though I didn't have a position of authority within the hospital. That when we are in the one power, it doesn't matter what your role is. It does not matter what our one role is, what our role is in the world. When we come from the one, I love this, one in God as a majority. There is no separation. There's no higher or there's no lower. We are all equal. This is one thing that Ernest Holmes really brings home in that first chapter of The Thing itself. We are all equal. There's no more God in you than there is in me. There's no more God in me than there is in you. And that is true about every life presence on this planet. This entire life is infused with pure spirit. There's no more infinite love intelligence of the universe in the past. There will be no more in the future than there is right here, right now in this room. What if we were to actually live our life recognizing that in this room there's only one power, one presence, that there's no separation in this room. None of us are separate from one another. If I hurt you, if I say something negatively about you, I am hurting myself because we are one. If I lash out, which we do sometimes when we are human, that's why we have forgiveness, because I've hurt someone else, but I've also hurt myself. There's only one. It changes the entire way we live our life. I remember when I took foundations class with Reverend Michael and him talking about this, saying that if we do only one thing and recognize oneness, we don't worry about prosperity, we don't worry about relationships, we don't worry about anything else. We just focus on oneness. There's only one power. There's only one presence. Everywhere I go, everything is an emanation of this one power. Separation starts to heal. Separation in our body, separation in our emotions, separation in our mind, separation in our relationships, separation in our finances, all the places where we feel separate, where we feel like we're not enough. But the only reason why we feel like we're not enough is because we identify with our finite self. But when we recognize that there's only one power and I am one with it, there's nothing a part of me that is separate than that one part, and I am one with everything, and everything is for me. Everything is for me. There's not a subtle thing against me. There's not something the shoe's not about to drop. Everything is for me all of the time, every single day. Healing happens exactly where we need the healing. This is why this is the foundational principle of our teaching and of the spiritual life. Because it changes everything. It is so simple, and yet it is that powerful. And it's creative. If we look at this world, we have all sorts of plants, trees, the nature. This earth is extraordinary. I'm on Instagram. I mostly follow nature pictures because I love seeing all the different things all over the earth. Not just nature, but what human beings have created. And then there's all the galaxies and the stars. And we're always discovering new things. I mean, the universe loves to create. When we look at the mystics, they talk about the spirit as they explain this universe. They explain it in terms of being and doing. There's this absolute being, infinite presence that just simply is. It just is. But from this isness comes creation. It is constantly creating itself into form. It is constantly bringing itself into form. We won't ask why, because Ernest Holmes doesn't like that question. I like that question. Last week, if you were here last week, we were talking about people have three basic questions: what, why, and how. And we resonate with different questions. I'm a why person, and so I want to know why it created. But Ernest Holmes says, and 3 times he says in that first chapter, don't ask why. So I ask why, but we'll stay out of that question, because that really goes nowhere. It goes somewhere, but whatever. Anyways. It creates. For whatever reason, it creates. And we are one with it. Remember, all that the divine is, we are. So we create. And this is the power of prayer and meditation. Because when we align ourselves, when our thoughts are aligned with the one, we are in our most creative potentiality. Our mind is always going. And we might say, well, why? Our mind isn't really creating all the time. It doesn't feel very powerful. But that's a lot of times because our mind is going. I'm going to go a little bit sophisticated here and differentiate between first cause and second cause. Because secondary causation is what most of us experience a lot of our life. Secondary causation is habits. We just have these habits. We don't even know where they came from. Often they came from our family, from habit patterns we grew up being raised in our certain family. Often our habit patterns are traced from genetic potentialities, things we've inherited from ancestries. For people who believe in reincarnation, we came in with karmic habit patterns. We were born with karmic habit patterns. So we're doing things, and often we're doing them automatically. We're not thinking about them. And what the process of this teaching is the more we realize that we're one power and one presence, and that we are one with it, that we are to become more responsible. I've heard people say that one reason why our teaching hasn't really flourished is because it's about taking responsibility, and a lot of times people don't want to take responsibility because it's a lot harder to say, I can contribute and co-create and co-participate in the life that I am creating through and I won't just say thoughts. Ernest Holmes was very big on thoughts because he was trying to move religion out of the mythic teaching, superstition, but it's also feelings. So out of our thoughts and our feelings and our being conscious of what those thoughts and those feelings are and moving into an alignment of co-creating something that makes sense to us, responding to situations from a place of oneness as opposed to a place from separation. Just that one thing. If we're just staying in this idea of oneness and something happens to us that is what we might judge as bad, but we respond to it from a place of oneness, this is all good, God is always for me, then we're going to discover something amazing happening even in that thing that we call bad. We will discover something beautiful. And sometimes I don't want to make it be Pollyannish, it takes time. All these mystics talk about that it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. We're on this incredible journey. But the key is knowing what our journey is about. And we were talking about last week about what the what is, and that what is knowing our oneness. If we remember that our purpose is to know and to remember that we are always one, and we hold to that one idea that everything is for my highest good, that everything, that I am loved passionately, unconditionally, there's nothing in this universe that wants anything negative or bad to be for my soul, that means everything that is happening is for the growth of my soul, for the unfoldment of my soul, and I hold to that. No matter what the conditions and circumstances, we're going to discover this power inside of us, a joy inside of us, a freedom, most of all, a freedom inside of us that is never limited by conditions and circumstances, and that's what we are evolving and becoming. That what I love about mystics and people who are spiritually awake is they're very free. They're not really too concerned about what everyone else is doing or thinking because I love the way Reverend Michael says it, the statistics are for people who are asleep. Because the statistics are people who are running on habit. You're going along with the statistics, but the moment you wake up, you are now pulling yourself out of the statistical energy, the habit pattern of the culture around you, and you've pulled yourself free, and you are creating something new with your own thoughts and your own attentions. There's only one power and one presence. So I want to, as well with every chapter, talk about spiritual practices, because we can have our thoughts about something, but the key is about becoming that which we're talking about. And for me, spiritual practices are essential to that. So I'm going to talk about the 4 modalities as well this month, along with the principle. And so with this principle is meditation and prayer. We talk about oneness, but we need to become that oneness. And meditation is one of those ways in which we do that. There's many different meditation practices, but taking a period of time a day to remember who and what we really are. To remember that there is this life within us that is unchanging, that has never been hurt, harmed, or endangered, that can never be limited, that has never been sick, that never is sad, that there is this place within us that is totally free, that is totally overwhelmingly beyond our wildest imagination, full of bliss and light and love, and to take that time to remember. Now, when you meditate, you might recognize that you have a lot of thoughts going around. For some people, I have a lot of thoughts going around. That's not the problem. What limits us in meditation is our judgment. Because the moment we have a judgment, what happens? We constrict. Now, judgment and discernment are different. It's okay to discern this works, this doesn't work, but with no judgment. The judgment, as soon as I say that's good and that's bad, I constrict. And that part of us that's aware then constricts. We've already constricted that. But if we can just witness whatever's going on with us emotionally without judgment, whatever's going on with us mentally without judgment, whatever's going on with us physically without judgment, we are tapping into that oneness. Because that oneness isn't separate and a part of all these thoughts that we have. The moment we recognize that we have thoughts, then we know for the first time that we aren't our thoughts. See, when our thoughts are running us, that's the asleep part. That's we're part of the statistics, is we have all these thoughts and we don't know that we have these thoughts. But when we meditate, even if you're still having them, even if your mind is still going 1,000,000 miles a minute, there is that part of you that recognizes that you have all these thoughts. We're becoming more conscious. The only type of meditation that I don't think works is when people say, I meditated and I have no idea what happened. I don't really fully understand that form of meditation, because I think the intention of meditation is to become more conscious of this plane of existence, of other planes of existence, but it is about becoming more conscious. And the moment we say, I don't know what happened, that means we went unconscious. Something in our mind went unconscious. So whatever's happening, even if you're going through your grocery list and you're going through all your judgments, watch yourself having those judgments. That's where the freedom happens, and this is where the oneness. So the reason why we do the meditation is when we go back into life, we start to see that. We could see the oneness that's underneath all the things that are happening. We start to differentiate between the surface of life and the underneath of life. And we're constantly reminding ourselves of that which is underneath is that which is most real. That which is underneath is more powerful than anything happening on the surface. That's where all the power is. I love that the prayer almost always starts, there's one power, one presence, one life, one power. It is the power. See, we give so much on the surface of life, all the power. We give our mind all this power. The power is that which is underneath. And then we have prayer. And prayer is remarkable. Prayer is where we move into form, into that creative essence. One of the ways that we pray here in Centers for Spiritual Living is what we call spiritual mind treatment, which is an old term. A lot of people don't like using it. It also can be called affirmative prayer. Whatever the name is, we get so locked up in names, is the power of it. We begin our prayers acknowledging that there's one power and one presence and that we are one with it. Already our thoughts are shifting. Our thoughts are no longer coming from separation. Our thoughts are no longer being driven by my ego, small mind. Our thoughts are no longer being driven by culture, biology, history. When we move into the recognition verbally that there's one power and one presence, and I am one with it, what happens is something starts flowing through me that I can't even... that I'm letting go of my own individual control. I'm moving into that oneness. I'm moving into that wholeness, that perfection that already exists, and begin to speak the prayer from that place. And that's a place where miracles can happen as we're praying, or we just have an aha as we're praying that will lead to a shift. I have a colleague who was sharing that there was a woman who came to her who had a lot of shoulder pain, and she couldn't get rid of it, so she was coming to her to heal the shoulder pain. She also happened to mention that she had older children who were having a lot of problems, and she was very stressed out about the problems of her children. And as my friend was praying for her, in the midst of the prayer, she had an aha and realized, oh, this woman is carrying the burdens of the world on her shoulders. Her children she's carrying that burden. So as she was praying, she shifted her prayer to pray about the children and the freedom that this woman had from her children. And then the person being prayed for, she didn't have immediate healing in that moment, but she got it. She got that her children were causing her a lot of stress, so her relationship with her children changed, and as that changed, all the pain in her shoulder went away. It wasn't that it happened immediately in that prayer. Sometimes we're looking for an immediate demonstration, but that prayer, moving into that oneness, we start seeing things that we don't see from our human limited mind, because now we've opened up to the infinite love intelligence of the universe that knows things that we can never know. And the ideal, so we always have the purpose of both, why they call it meditation practice and prayer, well, they don't call it practice, but setting aside, it's to practice, but the ideal is where we live our life from that place. This is the evolutionary process, where we want to, throughout the day, be as conscious as we can, witnessing our emotions, witnessing our thoughts. We still might react, but we still can notice. There's still a little space. We are still praying to know and see the truth. That when I was working in oneness, and even I remember when I first started working, I was so overwhelmed when I first became a minister, and I had to really work this out. It didn't come as easily to me as it did when I was working in a psychiatric hospital. I kept thinking the board hired me, that I wasn't there, and I was working through that. I am not an employee of the board. I am an employee of God's. I have to keep listening to God. I'm very clear about that now. I love my board. but it took a lot of work, because I just couldn't get past, because all these things that I was supposed to be doing. It was all so new that I couldn't get to the fact that I was really there for God. These are the thoughts. So we have our prayer and our meditation life, and that's to take us into our daily life so our thoughts continue to return to oneness. We're speaking from and as oneness. When we're having a conversation, just even be aware. When I'm having a conversation with someone, am I speaking as Harriet? Or am I speaking with an openness to an infinite oneness moving through me? That's something I'm working on now, is when I'm talking, where am I coming from as I speak and have conversations with people? Where is that creative energy coming from? Because when we are in alignment with the one, remember, when we are in alignment with one, we are aligned with the entire power of the universe. And when that is conscious, that is extraordinarily powerful and loving. All of this is if we're not experiencing. I was reading this book about prayer this morning, and they said the fruit, often we look at the fruit in manifestation sometimes, what's someone's external life. But they said the real fruit is the joy and the love in your heart. And when we practice this, as our joy and the love in our heart starts to expand, we notice it. We notice it wherever we go. Joy and love. Sometimes, I don't know if any of you I'm sure you all feel this, that sometimes as I'm praying, and I've been working on more consistent praying without seeing is what I'm consistently working on. And I stop sometimes because it feels like I'm going to explode. Like it's just too much love that I can't take it all in. So I stop and start thinking about something else. I'm working on it. But whether our life is what we would call human world, good or bad, what every mystic tells us is that when we turn to that one power and that one presence, that joy, that love is so beyond anything we could ever humanly imagine. It is so extraordinary. There's nothing that we could have in this human world that is extraordinary, undescribable, joyful, bliss-filled, harmonious. I love that word, harmonious, free, unlimited, creativity, freedom, as this one power and this one presence. This is it. One power, one presence. One power, one presence right now. There's only one power, one presence. Notice in your mind if you're judging anything. That's okay. Don't judge the judgment. One power, one presence. One power, one presence. That which is one has no judgment. It's never judging. It's unconditional love. all of the time. It only sees with love. It only sees with love. It sees every face of God, every person with whose eyes we meet. That's the face of God looking at us. There's only one. There's only one.